You hear Mark Cuban speaking out about how white people have to stop being insecure or defensive, I think he said, about privilege when these things are brought up. It's though the NBA is perceived, and I think for good reason, as more progressive than, say, the NFL or Major League Baseball. As Dominique has pointed out, it's a pretty low bar. It is still overwhelmingly a white owned league. What do you think the responsibility is for these white billionaire owners to speak out, and how should they support, or rather, what do you think their responsibility is given these circumstances?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily categorize ownership. I think it's all of us. It's the players, it's the coaches. I know from my vantage point, one of the biggest things has been to understand and to educate yourself. I think the more that you do that, the better feel you have, the more comfort you have. And what I've found personally is whatever reluctance or discomfort there exists to talk about and really embrace and confront these issues for white people, that's a real first step. And then I think, we see racism, you see discrimination. It's practiced everywhere, and it's practiced too much. That our awareness has all been raised, and I think you also hear that awareness isn't enough. And I would agree with that. I think a lot of people right now, hopefully more than a lot, would agree with that. And one of the obvious things for me, again, speaking from the vantage point of a white man who also enjoys that privilege, is in those situations, it's not enough to not characterize yourself as racist. This is about combating and confronting racism, and even when it exists in yourself. And I think that's, part of the transparency that we all need to look at ourselves first, and then see ways that we can contribute not only to our particular role, but how we fight that and combat it and confront it. And I think that's a pivot, hopefully, that can continue to be made.
All right, I'll take us back to the basketball bubble. So I've been thinking about a lot how it's going to impact different teams, and I was wondering what you thought, given that you have a young team. Do you think that being away from distractions and not having to travel is a boon to a young team like yours, or do you think that that's an extra hurdle that a more experienced team might be more comfortable dealing with?
It's a great question, and one I wish I could give a more concrete answer. I'll tell you what my hope is. I think teams that are connected, and it's true, teams that are connected, that are unselfish, that have leadership, those are always the teams that, there's a lot of talented teams, some maybe more so than others, but those teams that have those intangibles are the ones that win. And, I'd prefer to call it a campus than a bubble. But you do have some of the same, psychological challenges. And in that regard, I feel like competitiveness, in different situations, you were using the same ball, the baskets are still 10 feet, but there's going to be a lot of things that are different. And I think we're going to be able to feel those as we're there. There's going to be more normalcy as you're there longer. But I think that competitive focus, will be something. And really, the best players in the world, they have that. And to the extent that leadership is prevalent, I think that's part of being a great player. That's what we see from the great players in our league, that they practice that, and they'll lead the way for their teams. So if you're a team that doesn't have as we're a more balanced team, and I think that can be an advantage if we take advantage of it the right way. Where we have different players that are stepping up at different times, and we get more of a collective leadership from our group.